Who is John Horse?
He was a black Native American soldier who fought alongside the Seminoles in the Second Seminole War. In Florida, John Horse was from the region called Micanopy in north-central Florida. His father was the Seminole trader Charlie Cavallo. His mother was a slave acquired by Cavallo. He had a sister, Juana.
Juana, who was Juana? What role did she serve in John Horse's life?
Juana is his older sister that we know of. Juana in particular was instrumental because she and her, alongside her brother, maintained that freedom because of the family. With her being vulnerable as a woman, but as a mother of children, I think he being the younger brother felt a need to protect her as much as the people.
Right.
And so they worked together because their family needed to be protected.
Yes, ma'am.
Horse was raised when the American federal government instigated the Seminole Wars. He rose to prominence in the third year of what was to become a 7-year war of the first generation of black Seminole leaders, eventually decimated under Seminole War Chief Osceola, falling into the hands of the white American military commander, General Thomas Sidney Jessup.
From seeing stories being told in documentaries, whether it could be YouTube, social media, what are some missing links in the story of John Horse, Juana, and your family as a whole?
I think the missing link is that, one, the indigenous part needs to really be, I guess, combined. You know, don't overlook it just because when you think Indian or you think indigenous or whatever term you want, that it has to be this idea or this photograph.
Right.
Indigenous is indigenous to the community, regardless of your color. And I think once we say that we're indigenous or we're part of that indigenous group, that somehow we're saying we're not black. But that's not what we're saying, you know. And then when we're in Nacimiento, Mexico, when we're in Mexico, if we're saying you were born in Mexico, somehow I'm not black.
Right.
Like, it's not true.
Yeah.
So those cultures and those communities that we're a part of needs to be more, talked about, because if you keep just saying black, that's one dimensional. And we're not. We're very layered. We're very complex people and have so many different aspects in our culture that were significant. But if you just lay on to just one part, black, then you're losing everything that to me makes our community and our culture special.
Yes, ma'am.
The Horse had been fighting alongside Osceola and acting as his interpreter. Seized while under a flag of truce negotiating with Jessup's emissary, Militia General Joseph Hernandez, Horse was imprisoned with Osceola and others at Fort Marion, Castillo de San Marcos, the old Spanish fort in St. Augustine, Florida.
Horse gained his initial distinction for joining Miccosukie's brave wildcat, Cocoocee, to escape from the fort. Wildcat and Horse allied and went on to lead the remnants of the shattered Seminole Band, including members of the Miccosukee, Tallahassee, Appalachie, and Yamasee bands, to safety in the south-central part of Florida, ahead of white forces. In the Battle of Lake Okeechobee on Christmas Day, in 1837, Hau'opata Tustenagee, an ally of the captured Osceola and Seminole medicine man, Abiaka, led Wildcat and Horse in holding off the assault at Zachary Taylor. They successfully escaped by crossing Lake Okeechobee to take refuge in the Everglades. They fought Jessup in the Everglades himself on the Loxahatchee River. The following January 1838, the Seminoles were forced to flee again, offered a promise of peace and a new life. west of the Mississippi with his family, Horse finally agreed to surrender. However, Wildcat refused and fought until around 1840, when Horse was brought back to Florida from his exile in Indian Territory. Horse brought the offer of peace to Wildcat, contingent on his surrender and agreement to exile in Indian Territory, and Wildcat, by now the leading war chief of the remaining Seminole, finally accepted removal to the territory in present-day Oklahoma, which had been set aside for the Eastern natives in the early 1830s by the Indian Removal Act. Other bands still held out, though. The war continued until August 14, 1842, when Colonel William J. Worth finally declared victory and left the remaining fighters to their own devices deep in the Florida Everglades, when the Seminole continued to face threats of re-enslavement in their new home. Horse again joined forces with Wildcat to lead a group of disaffected Seminole and former slaves across the Rio Grande to northern Mexico. There they were granted land by the Mexican government in 1850, and where the black Seminoles could finally be assured of their freedom, Mexico having abolished legal slavery in the 1820s. Horse served as a captain in the Mexican army during this period, and after 1870, briefly with the U.S. Army again as a Seminole scout. Later, when, by now an old man, he made a trip to Mexico City to plead for reaffirmation of the land grant to his people, which local Mexican landowners were seeking to overturn. It is generally thought that John Horse died during this final errand to Mexico City in 1882.